we're in really dangerous territory if things don't change. The craft of casting will die in the next 10 years.
I mean, we always joke that casting is like dating. Like, it's like finding the one, you know? It's like looking for the one for every project.
Do a lot of research on who you're getting into bed with, so to speak. Make sure you have everything in writing on a contract.
Welcome to Jessica and Jenn from Tipsy Casting. Jessica Sherman is an award-winning casting director from LA who started work on huge franchises, Star Wars and Star Trek, and then became a casting director in her own right, casting hit festival films and shows for streamers, including Amazon's Tell Me Your Secrets and Willow for Disney+. And she proudly won an Artios Award for casting the Oscar-winning short Skin. Jenn Presser is a world-traveling casting director, and after traveling to over 30 countries and living in 7 states, now resides and works from London. She's worked on the Oscar-winning film The Help, George Clooney's Up in the Air, Bad Mums, as well as countless TV series and films as a casting director, including Claws. Together, they host the popular podcast Tipsy Casting, where they discuss casting your favourite films and TV shows whilst enjoying a cocktail. Let's raise a glass and welcome Jessica and Jenn.
Even the biggest of productions are like the most stingy people you'll meet. They'll give $1 million to Zendaya, but then everyone else is like taking like peanuts.
Welcome to another edition of the WeAudition Show. It's a special edition this week because we're doing a collaboration with Tipsy Casting, our friends Jess and Jenn over there. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
We're really great, actually.
Good,
we're
thank you.
less experienced at this than you are.
I hear on this
you've
podcast that you have to drink. Is that right? So I've got mine ready and I'm going to pour it right now. I hear that's...
Yes. Well, let's start there.
ASMR.
What are you drinking?
This is a canned cocktail with ginger beer.
Oh.
What is the alcohol?
Vodka, I presume. I don't know. It might be a tequila.
You haven't even checked?
I don't drink much, you know that. It's unusual.
6 p.m. somewhere.
Might be dangerous.
Yeah.
6 p.m. somewhere. There we go.
So Richard's going to be really drunk by the time we're done with this. Is
blended
what we're
cocktail
getting.
with real ginger root for a fresh and spicy taste.
Well,
there you go. That was
in
like
a very fancy
commercial,
wine
Rich.
glass. I love it.
Yeah, that's all I got.
What are you drinking, Jess?
I popped open a Golden State cider, which is my summer drink of choice because it's nice and crisp and lovely and easy.
Nice.
How about you,
Hi,
Jenn?
guys. I put it in our Tipsy Casting wine glass.
Oh, look at that.
Well, you have
Never seen that.
merchandise?
We have merch for us. We don't sell it. We don't have enough
Not yet.
listeners. No, I'm kidding.
Rich, we need
That's
to get
not
some
true.
merch. I need a
got some
WeAudition
mugs.
mug. We do have
Some
mugs.
people posted about mugs, didn't they? Members. They sent in their
I
pictures
don't
of their
actually
mugs.
have one myself, so I should
don't.
get one myself.
Yeah. Jess is the creator of this. I'll hold it up. I don't know if
I
you
love
can
it. It
see
looks neon.
Like Tipsy Casting.
Yeah.
It's like the little
Amazing.
director's chair.
Looks a bit Pink Ladies.
It is.
You have to
What's
have
in
an
it?
entirely full glass in order for it to make sense because then you can see the neon. So it really encourages, alcohol.
Red wine
drinking.
Well, mine today, I have a nice healthy green juice. They haven't sponsored us yet, but it's AG1. I drink this stuff every day. Athletic Greens. And I have I'm in LA, so I have a full day ahead of me. It's midday, so I can't be drinking yet, but I'm going to go to some fun events tonight.
Listen, I got a full day too. I've got a 2-hour MRI ahead of me, so I'm drinking now to prepare for it.
Wow. 8 p.m. here in England, so we're after this going out.
So-
all done.
Ladies, we've been following your podcast. You give us the best casting stories. What is a casting story recently that you think has been super significant?
Of our own?
Yeah, or someone else's, your own one you've been involved in?
Well, I was going to say, I think we have been dealing a lot with producers and directors kind of acting out lately, coming out of the strike in terms of like a lot of ridiculous requests. And we always complain about it, but and I don't think people understand how much casting kind of gets backed into a corner of working for free. And it's kind of become this standard thing. And so something that just happened to me while my family was here. So I was literally down at Brighton Beach and trying to enjoy the sunshine and the pier. And I'm in an argument with a producer on the phone because he's led me down this whole road. He was like, it's finance. We had, he had development financing. And he was like, it's a 10 million indie. We have all these people behind us, all these sponsors, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is I almost said no to the movie originally because it's very similar to what I'm casting, like a very low budget what I'm casting right now. And it's like almost identical in what it's about. But I was like, but this one, if it's done at 10 million and there's all this big sponsorship and everything behind it, it's going to be a very different version. And so I was standing there and this is the fourth time I think I talked to them, and I had done 2 Zooms that were over an hour each. And I just have become so cynical now because I'm just like, you just show me the money almost, like, because we put in all this work.
Wait, say that properly. What do you have to do?
Show me the money.
And they're a producer, so they never will, right?
No. And then, so I tell him, I said, okay, and Jess knows this because I got myself into trouble not doing a contract on one of the films that I did recently, and it was a whole fight. But so ever since then, I've been very strict about putting in a consulting contract that leads into an active casting deal. And so I said, well, I'll send it to you. You can deal with it. And he's like, great. So I send it to him, and I hear back in a day, and he's like, well, so we don't really have developmental financing. So can you just defer your fee until the profits, not even until it's finance?
Wait,
so you defer your consulting fee, which is a chunk of money for us, and until the profits. And then he's like, and then on top of it, we'll give you 10 grand to cast the whole movie. I'm like, this is all children. I was like, in what world for 10 million do you think it's okay to offer 10 grand to cast an entire film?
Well, and that's a 10 grand deferred, was it?
No, so the other part was that this is like for the active casting deal, because what we do to protect ourselves these days, because we get screwed over so much, is we'll do the consulting fee for, okay, it's $10,000 or whatever. And then we'll make sure our active deal is done. So I don't know, you get like 50,000 or 80,000, depending on the budget or whatnot, when you actually have to cast, because that's usually like, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 60 roles I've cast before in an entire film. And so I laughed. I was just like, what a colossal waste of my time. And so I just wrote back. I said, best of luck. No.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things of it. We all know that a lot of movies don't profit, especially indies.
Yeah.
And so for someone to dangle and as actors, we get that at the start of our careers a lot. People dangling the carrot for a credit or meals or copy. And the irony is when you see people offering a credit or a copy, they almost never deliver the copy because the copy never exists. It never even comes out, So it's a struggle for anyone that's trying to, do anything in the indie film world, right?
I'd say that was the majority of the stuff that was like posted on the websites, like, Mandy Star Now and a lot of the ones, self-submitting ones. The majority of them are those projects. And if you're starting out, you might think, oh, the lead in a feature film, that's amazing. I need that for my reel. But yeah, from my experience too, I've done a lot of those, and then they never finish it, or they never send you the role. You never see it.
I'm in like 4 films I've never seen.
I feel like the way, like for young actors or, actors that are just sort of entering into the space, to guarantee they'll get some footages to focus in on student films, because they have to turn it in because it's their thesis.
Yeah.
So otherwise they don't graduate. So it's like to zero in on the, if you're in Los Angeles, the USC, UCLA, AF5 film schools, it's like you have it all in your backyard here. Or if you're in London to focus on the other stuff. So I think that's a way to be a little bit more strategic when you're doing stuff for free.
Great student films. Yeah. Not all of them, because some of them, aren't necessarily right for me, or that but the graduation films really, really worthwhile, I think.
Do you find if you're working with indie films though, is that like a common thing that people, they want to bring on casting, so they get the cast, so they get the money, and it's that catch-22. Is that going to change ever?
I think we have to put our foot down, honestly. If I'm coming on, and this is sort of a case by case, but I think it has to become more prevalent. If I'm coming on when you have no financing and you have no development funds, and this takes a very special script and special filmmaker to get me on at that point. But if I'm doing that and what I'm bringing to the table is your green light, I'm a producer on this movie. I'm not just a casting director. If I'm making attachments that greenlight your film, that you need to expect to start this process with me as a producer, not just as a casting director. Because a casting director they build the world around whatever you've got, essentially. And we attach to the leads and all of that stuff, but you have to have money in order to get to that point. If you don't have money, then we're not strictly casting directors.
But that's that catch-22, isn't it? Because how do they get the money without the cast?
I mean, that's got to be that they have to have their own relationships to lean into agents and managers and all of that stuff. If they don't have it, that's where we come into play. But you have to either pay us accordingly and treat us respectfully, or we are producers on this film.
Right. So it should be a case where the producers really try and raise that development money first to do things like get a chain of title, to pay certain upfront costs, but also to pay a casting director in that first.
I always equate it to like writers. You wouldn't go and if you're going to option a script, you need the money to option it. If you're going to write, or you're asking somebody to, create a script from a book, you're not going to ask them to do it for free with the hope that it'll eventually get made or something like that. So they're always willing to like put up money for writers, but it's like casting for some reason is something that they just always are like, oh, you can just do it for free for now. And then like, hopefully we do it. And I just got almost screwed. I stood up for myself and had to fight for a different story, but like I got them their lead actress who secured the final financing. And then they actually called me and said, yeah, we're going to go with somebody else. And I was like, oh, no, you're not. And so I put up a massive fight, and I had to call a lot of people and create a lot of problems for them to be like, oh, okay, that was bad choices on our part.
That sounds like an inexperienced producer, because like if someone had produced something before and they know that they've attached to finance as a result of certain cast, well, that's a prerequisite for the production, isn't it? And that's if they pre-sold it based on a star, you can't change the star.
Yeah.
I think also there's when we come on to indie films, we usually have more experience than most of the people that we're dealing with. So it's something like when I'm meeting on something and I'm interested, but the interview is not them interviewing me. It's the reverse for me, at least. And so it's like understanding what the expectations are, if I can manage their expectations, but also, do I want to spend the next year dealing with this person? Because usually it takes that long for an indie,
So in an ideal world, if I was an indie producer listening to this show, because I see a lot of their decks, I get people sending me their, films that they want to make all the time. I see the team, the potential cast, all of those things. I never really see a casting director attached to that point. So if an indie filmmaker is at that point where they've got a concept, they either have a little bit of money or they're raising money, how would they find a good casting director, number one? And what should they pay them to get them on the project? And I'm talking like a low budget indie, under $1 million.
I think the best way to find somebody is to either like go to a short film festival, or if you go to like any of the other festivals. It's how I met one of my favorite producers I work with right now, is that she saw a film that I had in Sundance, and she reached out and she said, hey, I have the script. Here it is. It was, I think originally the budget was $300,000. It eventually ended up at $500,000. So it's very low budget. But she kind of just said, like, what are you willing to do? And personally, like I always say, anything below like 2 million, you have to set aside 2% of your budget for casting. So whatever that you have to give, say, I will pay you to the 2%, but I only have $3,000 to give you right now, or whatever the budget is. Just say that, and then say, as I get that, the rest in, we'll pay out the rest of the fee of whatever that ends up being. But I think it's a really great way, because we talk on our podcast all the time about how the older generation of casting directors are just kind of like snatching up all the work right now. And so I find that like festivals, short festivals, smaller film festival, things like that is where you're going to find the really cool up and coming casting directors who probably want to add more things to their resume and get more visibility on our scene of casting. So you probably have a better shot if you reach out to those kind of people. instead of going after Francine Maisler or Seraphin, because they might do it, but you're getting their assistant's going to cast it at that point because they're not making any money. So,
and do you think people go after those classic names for casting because of the work they've already done, or are those companies and legacy casting directors better at marketing themselves?
I honestly, I listened to your episode with Jason Kennedy, and he says it beautifully, I think, in that episode, that people think that just because you're, Francine or Lorraine, that you have more access to X, Y, and Z, which is not the case. We all do the same job. We have the same contacts. We deal with the same agents and managers, and we can get to the same bottom line that she does. But it's just they have this this misinformation that for some reason the rest of us can't do the same thing. And really, that at the end of the day, it depends on the filmmaker, it depends on the budget, and it depends on the script. If any of those things are bad, Francine and Lorraine are not going to be able to get anybody worth their salts just the same. So it doesn't really matter.
Right. And that's the same thing you're saying. If you've got the relationship with the agent and it's a good script, then the client should want it, and the money's there, the client should want to do it.
Yeah.
That's surely the beauty of the internet nowadays, isn't it? Because everyone has IMDb, and I'd say everyone in the industry has IMDb Pro, and you can look up someone's agent manager, give them a call or send them an email. Pretty much anyone can do that. And like you say, if the package is right, there's a lower barrier to entry in a sense. And it's not that you have to.
I think also like
the front door.
For us, we're not newbies. I've been doing this for 15 years. I think Jen is probably somewhere close to that as well, if not over. And we have that much time of establishing ourselves, building reputations, being trustworthy, like all of those elements that are important in this industry, because at the end of the day, it is a relationship industry. To know that you're not some rando off the street and that you can be trusted and your taste
need that
matters.
To get a response, to actually for them to take notice and to read the script and to take notice. Yeah.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I had a film that came to me during COVID. It was called How I Learned to Fly. And it had the money. It had a producer that was a lit manager that represented a very reputable director. So he was not like a random person by any means, but they had tried to make an offer to an actor before I came on board, and nobody responded to them. And it wasn't until I called that they started engaging, because they're like, oh, okay, this is a real thing that's got money. It's got people we recognize. Now it's fine, and then they ended up booking that actor. But it took all of that to get there.
Yeah. And it's like what you say, sometimes credibility in life it comes with money, right? Because when you put your money where your mouth is, things get real. And so I know this business is largely collaborative, and you have to start out that way. But I'm a strong believer in, once you hit professional standard, pay people what they're worth, pay people what they need. And if you can't figure that out, put that into the plan, But I think a lot of people make the plan without knowing what it should cost, and then try and fill in the gaps. There's a time to make a short film with your friends and everyone work for free and everyone muck in. But then if you want to start using professional people, respect them with the compensation, the credit, all of those things.
And casting, I feel like, is something you don't want to skimp on, because it's the first visual thing of the film. I've never understood that mentality by some people, where it's like, oh, we can skimp on casting, where it's like, no, maybe buy your clothes from Walmart instead of Target, or for costumes, or go to IKEA instead of, some high-end furniture shop for your set design. I was like, because I think the acting is just such a strong, piece to it, that if you get the wrong actor, I mean, we've I'm sure all heard the conversations over the years within the industry that if so-and-so would have not been in this movie, or if they, or on the flip side, because somebody was in this film, it was amazing and they were perfect for the role. And it's like, it may not have been the perfect script, but it's like, if you don't have any money at all to give to somebody to help you in that direction. And kind of what Jess was saying is that, I recently was talking to an agent, because I did a favor for a producer I work with a lot, because he was like, I've been calling this guy. We made a very high-end offer, and he's been around the industry for years. And he's like, I cannot get an answer. I've called, I emailed, everything, I've sent a foghorn, I just am like, I can't get a response. And I called him, and like within 10 minutes, I had a response. And I kind of like, after the fact, I was like, why? And he was like, the agent was like, Jen, I get so many quote unquote producers now emailing me, and I just don't even know who they are. Like most of them, I'd say like 80% are not worth their salt. They claim there's somebody, they don't have any real like credits behind them. And he's like, at least I know you. I know you're not calling me to waste my time. And if your name is on it, I know, you're going to be a part of it. So I think that's quite fascinating.
I think a validated intro is always, good in any sort of industry that people are busy. I know that if I'm ever trying to introduce somebody for whatever reason, I'll make sure that before I make an introduction, I look is there a win-win for both people? I'm not asking a favor of either side. If I'm putting two people together, it should be a beneficial thing on both sides. Otherwise, I won't do it, because I think then you start to ruin those relationships and those people stop taking your calls.
Yeah. And I think there's something about goodwill too, because just recently, Jess actually set me up with a really lovely producer over here, and he and I are hopefully going to collaborate on something. But while we were just chatting on a Zoom one day, he was telling me about a different project that he was struggling to cast. He's like, if you happen to know of anybody who's musically inclined, well, I'm casting a music biopic in the States right now. And so it's like, I know all those guys. And I said, you should really look at this kid. Like we loved him. He just ultimately at the end, we needed some more name recognition. And now so I have nothing to do with this other project of his, but I was like, you should start doing it. And I've probably given more effort and time of myself to getting that set up, and so that they could all get together and meet, than I have on some of my other projects right now. Right. But it's like, I'm not getting paid or anything. So I think I really believe in this actor. I think he's fabulous, but I also really like the producer. So I'm like, you know what? A little goodwill doesn't hurt to be like, hey, let me help you out on a project I have nothing to gain from. They already have a different casting director. And it's just, but I want to be helpful in whatever way I can, if I actually believe you have pure intentions and you're not just trying to use me and abuse me and then throw me away.
Right. And that's the thing about building relationships. It's a long game. You've got to foster them to get the outcomes later on, haven't we? Do you think the perception of casting directors is going to change after the Oscar for casting? As in, will producers start valuing you more?
I thought it was really astonishing that the year that they were getting ready to make that announcement, suddenly everybody was thanking their casting directors on stage. Like, where have you all been while we were rallying? I thought it was just hysterical. I would like to think that. I mean, the idea is, we talk about it very often and freely about our struggle as the younger generation of casting directors. And it's not exclusive just to us. It is the entire community and I know Jason spoke about this as well, that there are many casting directors that are hoarding work. And then the rest of us who are scraping by trying to keep our health insurance. So the Oscar is a phenomenal thing for us as a community. Do I think it will prohibit the people that are on the cusp of retirement from retiring because now they want an Oscar? Maybe. That's entirely possible. And also, is it going to just end up being the same circulation of the same casting directors? I mean, we see it in our Artios Awards, which you guys have been to a number of times. Yeah. It ends up being the same slate of people because those are the people that are getting the opportunities. It's not really shaking up. And I'm like trying to think of what the stats could potentially be of like an indie breaking through. Like, sure, Moonlight did it. Moonlight is sort of like a drop in the bucket compared to how many studio films do it, So I think it's just an interesting concept.
I think it'll have a big impact to see, because if you watch how the big awards go, and even if you kind of look at the BAFTAs, because the BAFTAs have a casting category, and it's always the same kind of movies that win. So I'm equating it to After Sun. So if something like that breaks through, then most likely the casting director would get nominated, or our pal of the podcast, Carmel Cochran. If Saltburn would have done a bit more of an awards run this year, even more so than it did, she probably would have been nominated. So it's going to have to be those flash in the pan, sparky indies that would get somebody new there. But I agree that it's probably just going to be the same old people probably getting nominated.
It's sort of a vicious circle, isn't it? Because when you think about an awards, I just voted for the Emmys. I'm an Emmy voting member. There's so many things that your eye gravitates to the things you know. And then that means, what do you know? It's the stuff that you've seen advertised a lot and the stuff that your friends have talked about. And so it's sort of impossible as any Academy member of any sort to see everything and really be objective to that. And then I think that cycle repeats. And hearing you say that about casting, I mean, it's very similar for actors. There's a few percent at the top, which we as actors feel like, oh, you guys are casting those people over and over and over and over again. And as the journeyman actor, we're not getting those lead roles. And then as the starting out actor, you're not even getting a shot in one of those shows and you see the same faces again and again. It's sort of, it has parallels. And getting back to your producer question, they want the name to fund their movie.
I would say though, I think that the actor's struggle is tied to our struggle, because if you are hiring the same casting director, they are bringing in the same group of actors. So I think until they start shaking things up and giving different opportunities, your plight will be tied to ours. And I had another thought, but
how can an actor help you guys with that? Like, if we're going to have thousands of actors listening to this podcast, what could they do to help you guys come up?
Well, I mean, I just recently decided to do something very drastic and enter into the producing realm myself, because I was like, I'm tired of not getting jobs or being a part of this like world. So a good friend of mine over here was like, I'll partner, I'll co-produce with you, and she's very good producer, but I was like, okay, as long as you take me under your wing, because then I can. I mean, it's one of those things that I can't get jobs if nobody will give them to me. And that's a bit out of my control, because I can meet everybody. I can go to all the events. I can put myself out there as much as possible. But when we live in this world where it's either studios or higher up people making your fate for you, the only thing you can do is go and make your own fate. And that's why I was like, you know what? People have told me I'd be a good producer. I don't know if I actually will be, but I was like, I might as well give it a shot, because what else do I have to lose? We say this on our podcast all the time. Like, we have nothing to lose at this point, because we're already not getting the jobs. The worst that can happen is we'll still not get the jobs.
I learned recently, sort of through our journey as podcasters and being as open and vulnerable that we are. One, I learned that all of our listeners are not necessarily fans, that they have sent episodes to people just truly to get us in trouble, which is like, if that's you should take a look at yourself. And two, we've made some enemies because we're so outspoken. Even though we don't call anybody out specifically, people come into working relationships with a chip on their shoulder about us. And this is something I've experienced myself. And it's really disheartening, because it's like you could take inventory of this issue as somebody from a position of power. You can take inventory, recognize it, and say, this is part of the legacy that I want to leave in this industry. I want to nurture and bring in the next generation, whether it's of actors, of casting directors, whoever it is, whatever your position is. Or you can be defensive and vindictive, and you can figure out which way you want to do it. And it's sad to see that it's becoming the latter versus trying to nurture the people that are out there that could be the most amazing casting directors, that could be the most amazing actors. I will say, my thought was, I'm going to take a little left turn back to where you were before. The unique thing about actors versus casting directors, and really every other profession that's part of our process, is as an actor, you are resigned to scheduling. You can only be on one set at a time, right? If the scheduling works to put you on a number of sets, great. If it doesn't, you don't get that job. For casting, they can do 15 projects at the same time, especially in the world of self-tapes, because nobody is watching them. It's all self-tape, so they don't have to be in the room and they can do more. So I think, and I'm sure we will talk about it, but like the world of self-tapes, I think is such a disservice to actors and casting across the board. And that's my TED Talk.
Tell us more. Why is it a disservice? I personally love doing self-tapes because it allows me to do them on my schedule.
Yeah.
What about you, Rich?
I like a self-tape a lot for lots of reasons. And I think that's partly because I get shit nervous when I walk in a room with 5 people looking at me. Whereas a tape, I'm quite happy to do that and I do my best work. And when I'm on set, I've got the job, I'll absolutely, do everything. And I love it. And I think I do my best work on set after I've been cast. But the audition, I suck at that.
And I think there's value in that and recognizing different people thrive in different environments. And that is fine. And I think that is the world that we were living in before the pandemic, where the self-tape was the plan B. So if someone couldn't make it in, or they were in London and you're in LA, self-tape, wonderful, great, do it. But when it's exclusively self-tapes, the younger generation of actors who are coming into this industry trying to be professionals have the tiniest opportunity to build relationships. It is not like that. In the room experience tells us as casting directors so much, and also allows us to connect with the actors and get to know them a little bit in that space. So that part is gone. And then as far as casting directors are concerned, I mean, I had this conversation with a casting friend yesterday, which was talking about her assistant who got into casting in 2020 and has never been in an office and doesn't know the priorities of a casting office, has never been in the room with an actor, has never done all of these things. That how the hell is that person going to grow up to be a casting director if they've never been in an office with a casting office? Like we're in really dangerous territory if things don't change. Like, great, we got an Oscar, but the craft of casting will die in the next 10 years in the process.
It's so interesting you saying that perspective, because I didn't think of that before about someone that's never physically worked with actors.
Yeah.
Also about training and everything as well. There was a thing with, I think it was KPMG or Apple or one of the, basically a big corporate saying, no, we're not doing that anymore, because although it's good for the individuals who are high up, yes, for the corporation as a whole, it's very bad because they can't train up their old people. And someone in the office can't lean over and say, how do I do this, when they're stuck? And then, or go out to dinner. And I was talking to a corporate person I know that's been in it a long time. And he was saying that he did a lot of his work outside of the office, taking someone under his wing, going for beers of an evening, chatting about their girlfriends or whatever.
Around just the park, that kind of thing.
Or like, don't worry about it. Let that one go. Because you couldn't do that over Zoom. That person might be at home and having a really bad day over it. Whereas actually the person in the office, the middle management, could take them aside and take them for some, beers and say, that happens sometimes. It happened to me as well, and tell them a story. Don't ever tell anyone, sort of thing. They feel a bond, and then that's a better company, and corporately that works. We're losing that in film as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
I can't imagine we were struggling to find mentorship in casting.
Mentors,
and I can only,
good word. Yeah.
I can only speak for casting, but I'm sure it's not an exclusive thing for us by any means. But like, finding mentors was so challenging before. Now it's got to be non-existent. Like, how do you bond with your boss? You can't. You're just through a Zoom screen.
Well, what's interesting is I have a mild obsession with learning about community and things like that. So I buy a lot of books on the subject of community and friendships and connection and things like that. And there's scientific data all over to show that the amount of personal relationships you have is exactly relevant to your longevity and your health, your mental health for sure. And what, obviously WeAudition, we set it up as a video chat platform, but we're very big about keeping community. That's why we do live events like you have yourself. It's so important that we don't just keep to ourselves on a screen, and you go out and make those relationships for so many reasons. And the ones you're saying is interesting, because I've never thought about that before, about these new casting directors. How are they going to understand how to interact with actors?
Yeah. Well, and one other thing I would say too, that kind of like hinders sometimes the actor, is if we don't know you, and I've learned this from like teaching classes and stuff lately, because that's how I've been getting my fill of trying to meet new people, especially over in the UK, but is if you can take notes, because if we've never read you, I have started to find out, and I've done it because I've read with friends. I'll be a friend's reader. Like, they'll be like, hey, I have a self-tape. Can you come and read with me? And they'll do it 12 times. And I'm like, what are you doing? You would never get this opportunity. And then it's like, and you wouldn't get this opportunity in a live audition. So, and I've had some issues where I've given opportunities to actors and they've gotten the role based off a really good self-tape, and I didn't know them prior. And then they get to set and they're like, I'll get a call from the producer saying, yeah, they can't really like take notes. We're like, just for future reference, like we kept trying to get him to go this direction. Like she was not having it. And so just like mark that in your head or whatever. And it's one of those things that it kind of makes us then more tentative to send new people and give those new opportunities to new people because we just don't know you. And whereas if you were in the room and we're like, oh no, he can adjust like that. Like, or he can really, if you want, it might be like a good old boy reading, but then you can turn into the evil psychopath in 2 seconds. Like we know that. And it's like, I think people forget that casting directors have so much information in their brain through all this experience that we draw on all the time. Like even, Jess and I have a lovely group chat with a bunch of casting directors, and it's like a hive. Like we'll go and be like, hey, who do you know who could do XYZ? Or does anybody know this? And everyone just immediately chimes in and your brain just starts like spitting out information from years of knowledge. And these new casting people will never have that unless they go back into the room because they don't know really like, oh, are they, half the time I would read actors and they'd be British or Australian. And I had no clue until I actually started talking to them after the audition. Because they would come in using their American accent, read an American role, and then they would say in there, I can't do an accent, so I won't even try to like pretend.
Go on, please try. Go
yeah, Absolutely not. But like they would like, as they're walking out the doors, talking their other accent, and I'm just like, whoa, hold on. Are you not American?
Good for them.
Yeah.
I know.
But I mean, what do you say to the actor that lives in the middle of nowhere that says, okay, great. Like if we go back into in-person auditions, I'm screwed because I don't live in LA. I don't live in New York. Where am I going to get my auditions from?
I don't think they disappear. I think that we go back in the room to start having that old experience again. And I think we still invite those actors. The thing is that if we don't go back into the room, that, I feel like every actor has a sense of a timeline. Sometimes they're not accurate of what they think, how long, most of the time they're not accurate, but how long they think it'll take them to get their first role or to build these relationships.
Wait, no, I heard it's overnight.
Overnight?
You do one audition and then you become a star.
Wow.
Right? Which night?
Usually a Tuesday, Rich. Usually a Tuesday.
In 20 years?
In 20. But yeah, so I think it's like that notion, whatever that timeline you think is in your head, like multiply that by 10 because it's going to take us that much longer to get to know you and what you're capable of, especially not in person. Like, we've had those actors where we've had them audition over the years via self-tape, whatever it is. And then when you get them in the room, if you fly them into test or whatever it is, like you get a different perspective immediately, and not necessarily that they bombed or, I've had many times where they just like blew it out of the water, and that's very exciting, but it's a kinetic energy that you need to feel.
If you'd like to join the WeAudition community, go to weaudition.com/show to get 25% off. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. And
I think that's a bit like dating.
What?
I mean, I haven't ever done it, but if you met someone on text and they're not going to be the same as they are in real life.
Exactly.
The catfish of casting, right?
I mean, we always joke that casting is like dating. Like it's like finding the one, it's like looking for the one for every project.
Yeah. Jen, you've spent some time in the UK now after casting for many years in the US. Do you find differences in the UK actors to the US actors?
Massively, honestly. I mean this, no disrespect. I've said it on our podcast many times that I love all my friends in the US. I'm friends with a lot of actors there. I just find that UK actors tend to be a little bit more reliable in giving good performances. Where
consistently good as an actor, you mean? Okay, that's interesting.
And I think it all stems from training over here. I think actors train a lot differently than especially actors who come up. I'm not speaking about you guys, but like, like people who are born in the States and they wake up in Nebraska one day and they're like, hey, I want to be an actor. And then they move to LA and they'll take some classes at, one of the local studios. But here it's like, it's almost like the system weeds it out for you so that instead of us going through thousands of people we only go through 700, and we know they're all trained in some aspect. I'm not even saying like they had to go to Lambda or ROT or anything like that, but they've already been kind of vetted to a degree that is not seen in the States. So it's like especially me, since I'm new and I don't know as many actors here as I do in the States, I'll give chances to anybody and everybody, because I'm like, if I can watch your work, great. Or if I can bring you in, that's awesome. So, and usually I find even if they're not right for it, they give really good performances, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, not this, but let me remember you for something else. And so that part is like a bit nice. I was telling an actor the other day who I did a consultation with that, literally, I'm because I still span. I still have movies back in the States, and then I have stuff here. And so I released a breakdown in the States for a 30s to 40s female, any ethnicity, in the States, about a month ago. And
I think I'm right for that.
Yeah, you're in, Darren.
That's what actors over here are like sometimes, aren't they? They hear no matter what the range, female, male, old, young, they go, I'm right for that.
Oh, 100%. I think I probably at least had 20 men submitted, but over that span, I had 4,000 submissions, and it was only released in New York and LA. And then, so to compare that, like when I very first moved to the UK last year, I did a film very similar that was probably 30, maybe 25 to 35 female, any ethnicity. I had 500 submissions. So that's the difference. You're like, you're trying to find the needle in the haystack in LA. Where here, there's lots of needles. You just have to pick which one is the right size.
I think a couple of things that make that happen, though, is from someone that grew up in the UK. I started my career in the UK, and now I've been in America a very long time. The barrier to entry in the UK is higher. For instance, Spotlight has certain, and people dislike this sometimes, but it has a barrier to entry of you've got to go out and figure out your own work for a bit before you can get into that system. The American system,
anymore. Actually, they've changed it.
Has that changed?
Yeah. They did just change it.
Right.
So they can make more money.
It makes more money. The American system, the making more money system, firstly, there's more actors here. I mean, there just is. I couldn't always run into another actor in London, but I can run into an actor within 3 feet of my apartment door if I want in LA. So there's more actors, and then the systems are really kind of wide open for anyone to join. You can pay some money and put up a headshot and you're an actor.
Yeah.
And then you can submit to these jobs.
Here. You have SAG-AFTRA, and you have union and non-union jobs, where we don't have that in the UK. You tend to have people who are or choose to be equity, choose not to be equity, but there's no differentiation, really.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just this whole different funnel, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's quite fascinating what's happening right now is that so much work is coming to the UK and Europe in general, because of all the hikes in pay and everything and how expensive it has become to shoot in the States. Everyone's coming here for the financial relief to get their little indies made, that they don't have the budget to pay exorbitant, location fees and actor fees and writer fees and all that kind of stuff.
And let's threat of a strike as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, in the past 2 months, I've had 2 producers from the States call me and they're like, hey, like, do you think we can do this? If I change some stuff, can we do this over in the UK? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, come on over. I need the work, and that's what I think is going to change a little bit, because on the heels of that, I'm having a lot of actors reach out and be like, how do I get a visa to work in the UK? Because I'm seeing everyone start to work there. And I'm like, okay, well, it's hard, just as hard as it was 10 years ago for British actors to go to LA, get their visa and work outside of pilot season. Like it was, now it's almost the reverse. And I was like, you really have to prove here that you have XYZ credits and awards or whatever to warrant a visa over here. And so I think we're almost in this very weird transition of power between the
let's
two.
talk about that for someone that doesn't know. For an actor to move from the UK to the US, you need what's called an O1 visa. And that's a visa of extraordinary ability. So what you have to do in that is you have to prove that you have reached a certain level in your career and have been paid a high salary. There's press on you. There's, magazine articles. You have trained at a good school or have a degree or some kind of education establishment there. You have to have judged certain other competitions and other people's work. There's all these criteria. And I think a similar thing exists for the other way around if you're a US person coming to the UK. But over recent years, even the O1 visa, a lot of casting or productions don't want people on O1 visas here. They want them on green cards, even though I think technically that's not something they should be asking for or discriminating against. Have you noticed that casting, or sorry, not casting, I don't want to blame it on the casting, but that's who we get our notices from.
Yeah.
But the producers don't want people without citizenship or green cards or what?
I don't know that it's specific to citizenship. I think it is because you can't. Basically, I believe, this is my understanding, that when you hire someone with an O1 visa, even if it's a blanket visa, it has to be converted into the productions visa. And so that takes time. So when it's episodic, and especially like something like a multicam that's moving so fast, we're only a week ahead of our own schedule when we're casting. So when it's episodic, we don't have enough time to process that transition. And that's why we typically cannot engage with an actor who doesn't have a green card. If it's a series regular, then it becomes a different story, because then we usually have more time to be able to do that processing, even if it's like trying to petition for a visa for that actor, or if it's a feature, like we'll usually have enough time to do those things. But when it's episodic TV, that's when we start to see restrictions come from production that we can't engage with visas. But that's the same thing. It's like, even if you have a project specific visa, so like if, let's say, Warner Brothers got an actor their visa for this movie, it may not expire for 3 years, but then it still has to be converted to whatever the new production is. So that stuff takes time. I think that is really the only hang up in the process, is the amount of time it takes, not because citizenship is required or, whatever that might be.
So there's a logistical thing. There's extra paperwork to do. On that note, if you're a non-union actor that's out there thinking, oh, I'm just going to stay non-union as long as possible, are you missing out on union work? Because what I hear is sometimes the productions, even though they can cast a non-union in that role and they can Taft-Hartley them, or do the required paperwork for anyone that doesn't understand what that means, is it sometimes a situation where the production would rather not, and they'd just rather pick a union actor?
I think like one thing I always say to this question is it kind of depends on the budget level, because when I was casting a TV show for TNT, it didn't matter. Like we would Taft-Hartley people all the time. Like it would always depend. And to be fair, when we fill out the Taft-Hartley paperwork, we have to say why we're hiring you and why we couldn't find anybody else who would suit this role. You have to prove, we have to prove that you are something special. How do you
do that? Is it like a statement? Do you say that you couldn't find another male with a handsome male with brown hair like Richard?
Well, they have different boxes you can tick. If it's like this is a young actor, like a child, this is their first job, or if it's somebody that has like a special skill that, they're like an elite fencer, or maybe they're like an Instagram person, or whatever it is that that they require, like that kind of personality for whatever it is. So it just depends.
And to be fair, like SAG really did kind of like loosen up quite a bit, at least when I was casting the show, because I think there's for the money. I wasn't going to say it, but okay. But at one point, because you could just say, well, I couldn't find anybody else. I can't remember, there used to be one excuse that was literally like, we just couldn't find anybody else. And then you didn't really have to show much proof after that, and they would just put them through. But the only thing I was going to say is that Taft-Hartleys do cost money to file them and do all that. So if you're on a really low budget film, then you don't really want to, some people will be like, no, let's find a SAG actor who it'll be already in the paperwork and all their stuff, because they're already registered with SAG as a SAG production. What, Jess? I can tell you want to say something.
Do they cost money? I thought that the production could get fined if that's not improved in time. I didn't think they cost money.
No, I'm pretty sure every time you Taft-Hartley, unless it's changed, somebody can correct me on this, but I know it used to be not a ton of money, but maybe $100. And so
I always thought there was like a price to pay, a fine of some sort, which is why some producers, actors love to believe we're unique and special and all this, but to be honest, there's a time when you're just saying more coffee, sir, and you can do that great. And so can the next guy, and so can the next girl, and so can the next person over there, right? They can do that line just as well. And in that sense, why would you Taft-Hartley someone when you can just avoid that paperwork?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, if it's still true, which I know it was a few years ago, is that if you're working on something where the budget's already tight or they don't want to like pay more money than they already are, because even the biggest of productions are like the most stingy people you'll meet. And it's like, yeah, they'll give $1 million to Zendaya, but then everyone else is like taking like peanuts to like make up for that cost. And so then they're like, well, do we have to Taft-Hartley something? I could use that $100 to like pay for a, round trip car fare or something. I don't know. Right. But like, it's something like that where it's like, that's the only time I've had issues like on very low budget things where they're like, no, we've already signed the SAG agreement. It just would behoove us to hire SAG actors to keep our budget as small as possible. Because also for some reason, I feel like producers in their head, and this goes across the board on a bunch of things, but they're like, oh, if we give them the option to do this for one, they're going to do it for all. And so they're like, no, instead of just like one, maybe like unique instance. So they're like, no, we're just going to use SAG actors and do it that way. But
that's the point in the rules, I suppose. That's why SAG-AFTRA make the rules so their members make more work and have more work. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Design. Yeah, I think what I was trying to figure out is if you're an actor listening to this that's not union, should you try and be union as quick as possible to get the good work?
No, I was going to say, from my very limited, I've never been an actor. I have no idea like how to, because I do think it's a personal choice.
I don't know. Your accents are on point, and so is your "Show Me the Money." They were both on point. So I'd cast you in an instant, Jen.
Thanks, Darren. I'm so talented. I'm multi-talented. I'm going to just start putting actress on everything.
Producer, actress, casting.
And when anybody asks me who said I was an actress, I'm going to say Darren. Go check with Darren. He knows.
There you go. Hired.
I forgot what we were talking about.
the union. I think, honestly, the union stuff, yes, it's a personal choice. Some actors are FICOR just so they can have access to that thing. But, they still be able to take union jobs. They just can't vote, I believe, is the stipulation. But I think it's one, you get a lot of protections being a union actor that, save you from other things, which I think is very valuable. But I will say that's got to be a decision that makes sense for you. If you are a commercial actor and you're making a lot of money on non-union commercials, which seems to be the most prevalent thing these days, and then you switch into union, those opportunities are going to become fewer. And the space becomes more competitive. So you have to be prepared for that transition. And like the initiation fees and the dues are no joke for SAG-AFTRA.
Multiple thousands, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like it has to make sense for the job that you are getting in order to take that on so that it can pay a portion, if not the entire sum. It just depends. But I think, if you can stick it out and be SAG eligible for a while, that's great. Sort of like,
I think what my question really is are casting directors seeing non-union actors as much as they see union actors?
I think it depends on the role.
Right.
If it's a co-star, it's under 5, whatever it is, then there's really no differentiation. I'll see a non-union versus a union. That's fine. Knowing that I can Taft-Hartley if the production allows it. If not, then obviously I actually worked on a TNT show myself in 2018 or 2017, and they were no Taft-Hartleys at all. So we were only allowed to consider union actors. And so it just depends on the production ultimately.
Right. Just one of the things I love about you is you also have this amazing charity that you do every year. Tell us about A Cause for Entertainment.
Yeah, so we are a 100% volunteer nonprofit based in Los Angeles. This year is our 10-year anniversary. And yes, and our focus is to raise awareness and funds to support women and their families who are going through a breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. And so we work with a number. Basically, what got me into it was sort of realizing these massive nonprofits that are, they're the marquee names that we always see during the month of October. And you see how much overhead they have. And I think in California, at least, it might be not international, but domestically, you only have to donate 10% of your earnings to the actual cause in order to be considered a nonprofit. And that blew my mind. So as soon as I realized that and realized how much was going into just keeping these organizations going, it was like very clear. So we are 100% volunteer. We don't take any money home. We try to get as much for free. And then we work with a few beneficiaries every year. For the last 6 years, we've worked with this woman who runs Shay Sharp's Pink Wishes. And she started as sort of like Make-A-Wish in the sense of like granting wishes to terminally ill women. But now she's expanded and she helps while they're in treatment, and really like the boots on the ground that are actually doing the work with the people that need it. And so last year we didn't do it last year because of the strikes, but the year before and for the last 5 years before that, we were she's been our sole beneficiary for the last couple of years. And we're excited to come back in person this year in October for our annual fundraiser. And then we always do really great work with Charity Buzz. And we put up a lot of things for auction that are exclusive, like entertainment experiences, but also professional meetings. So you get a little bit of everything.
Oh, amazing. And there's a big entertainment community behind it. I've been to a couple and we've tried to support you in the past. How can anyone listening support this year's Cause for Entertainment?
Well, we love money. So if you want to donate it, that's great. You could do that on our website at causeforentertainment.com.
We're going to do some graphics on this and make some dollars fall down as this is happening. Right? We're going to make it rain on the pod.
I love it. And if you're not a money person, then, we love having volunteers for the big day, which will probably be mid to late October. Or if you want to donate things that are in kind, we've had like Fabletics and the Honest Company donates like big baskets in the past. And there's a lot of, we welcome corporate sponsors. We welcome all of the things. So you can find us online at acauseforentertainment.com or on social media on Instagram. Like we're very active on the Instagram. It's just at A Cause for Entertainment.
And if you're an actor on a show that's maybe a series regular, you might be able to do some sort of a session, like a package where you can get something for the show, maybe some merchandise to donate, maybe
some signed memorabilia,
set visit, something like that. Leverage your position there to help out the charity, right?
Yeah.
What are you guys excited for coming up?
I will say I'm very excited to be a producer. It's been one of the most exciting things. Scary as hell, but I am really excited to be kind of a part of this project that seems to be really cool and really fun, and to kind of tackle. I'm not one of these people who likes to be stagnant in life, so I love a new challenge. So it's probably my most exciting thing coming up.
I'm hopeful for a road trip in July.
Please come.
Where are you going to go?
Well, Jen and I are planning a little something. We're hoping that it all works out. But
this is going to be like a Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
Thelma and Louise's Tipsy Roadshow.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what we're hoping for. But I've never in my life gone on a road trip. So this was, I sort of invited myself to do this, and she welcomed me.
I did one from one side of the country to the other. I remember my friend in England, he came to LA to visit me, and a guy that he met here cast him as a model in a shoot that was shooting in North Carolina. Oh. And I remember he called me up and said, he was in England. He's from England. And he called me up and said, I'm going to do this shoot in North Carolina, but I told them to fly me to North Carolina and home from LA. So I'm going to come visit you. I was like, cool. And he's like, and you're going to come and meet me in North Carolina, and we're going to drive back across the country. And I was like, I love it. And I just got a new car at that point. So I shipped this car out to North Carolina. We drove the whole way across the country.
Wow.
Was that in the Jag?
It was in the Jag, and which broke down several times. British cars.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah. But we didn't go in a straight line. We went sort of down to Miami through Florida. Oh, it's a great thing to do. And, you know, even I know we're talking about acting today, and I think that those moments when I think of characters, there's so many people I met along the way, not even had to have a big meeting with them, just some guy at a truck stop, you get a real good sense of the country when you do that.
Yeah.
If you just spend all your time in LA and New York and on a plane in between, you're not getting real human experience. You don't get the richness of those.
Yeah, I think honestly, sort of taking it back to one of your previous questions about like the difference between international actors and American actors, I think that's a really big part of it. That, you know, a lot of actors will come to LA and to New York and just be like, I'm ready, I'm doing it, we're going to go. Versus I think, you know, in Europe, just internationally, you do gap years, you go have life experiences, like you become a well-rounded person because you have all these different exposures. And I think those are really valuable.
I mean, I love seeing actors create their own work. I don't need to see one more film about an actor struggling to do auditions, about the perils of the acting industry.
No, I agree. I love seeing people's work.
There's so entourage
or a writer
works.
that has a problem or has writer's block. I see loads of those.
I'm even amazed at how many TV shows in Hollywood exist where one of the characters is something to do with the entertainment industry, actually. Because I sometimes sit and watch that and go, oh, okay, I care that you're a struggling writer in this show, but the rest of America probably doesn't. Mm-hmm. You know,
but
why aren't you a struggling accountant? You know,
the best, I think, take on that was Barry. Like Barry, I found so fascinating because it's a little bit meta, but also like a hitman that wants to be an actor. Like, how do you sell that? But I think that was the best execution of it for sure.
And listen, Henry Winkler's a legend, right?
Put it on my list.
I met him briefly in Heathrow Airport. I was checking in for my flight.
Did he?
And he was in front of me in the line, charming the hell out of the check-in staff. They were all like fawning all over him. He's brilliant. I was like, yeah. There's me hoping for an upgrade. I've got no chance after the Fonz. there's no amount of charm I can turn on for this upgrade right now.
That's amazing. That's great.
You got any final thoughts, Richard, before we tap out?
Oh gosh, don't leave it to me. Leave it to.
He's had a full glass of his cocktail, so he's good to know one right now.
Been a while. Good to know.
Yeah. You've got the British flush there, Rich.
It's just hot here. It's hot.
Oh yeah. It's like when I have allergies when I'm crying, you know.
Yeah, it's really dusty actually, especially in those emotional scenes, isn't it? It gets really dusty. Thanks very much for doing this. I suppose it's been really nice to have a chat and not talk about the usual stuff. And I hear you're on your mid-50s in your podcast. Congratulations on that. If we can have that sort of success, that would be brilliant.
By the way, that's podcast, not age, just for anyone that missed that.
Like, excuse you.
Numbers of episodes, nowhere near that. They're nowhere near that.
And how long have you been doing it then? Has that been a year? Or do you...
A little over.
Wow.
So one a week for a little over a year. Well, that's...
Yeah. We took a little bit of a break for...
Christmas.
The holidays, yeah. And then we just took a little bit of a hiatus break, just 2 to 3 weeks, I think. And now we're back on it.
Well, you know what I want to say as well, thank you on behalf of Actors Everywhere for doing that, because one of the things we're talking about relationships and being in the room earlier, it brings to mind for me that back when I started, there wasn't anything like this. We had inside the actor studio of James Lipton, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so now one of the benefits, I think, of that is we are, as an actor starting out now, you do have access to these candid conversations. You do have access to people on Instagram and things like that. So there's a lot more you can learn and things you can do to build relationships, even if they're not in-person relationships. You know, so I think as any actors listening, take advantage of that. You know, listen to the podcast. Don't just listen to ours. Listen to all the other ones out there. especially Tipsy Casting.
Yeah.
And follow us all on Instagram. And I think the cream does rise to the top, bro. You see who's doing what. Having that access to this candid information is really helpful to people, and it can actually help them in their career more than they think if they absorb it and take note of it, rather than just doing this one track mind path because no one really lays it out for you.
I think, this is sort of one of the gifts, like sort of the silver lining of COVID, is that when we were all stuck in our homes, I think there were so many of us as casting directors that were like, what can we do? How do we help? And Jason Kennedy was a really big part of that, doing the open calls for all of his shows and just like wanting to keep actors occupied. I was doing coffee with casting, which is like,
I remember we did an Instagram live, didn't we?
Yeah.
Back in COVID, me and you. Yeah.
So I think, there's that opened up, I think, a sense of community in some capacity that allowed us to connect and to create these other opportunities. And I totally agree with you. There is a wealth of information out there for anybody who has like the tiniest of interest in anything, that if you're not doing it, you should be doing it. Because I think even in our episodes, when we have guests on, or even from each other, to be honest with you, like we learn stuff all of the time and on our own show. So I think it's so valuable, and to embrace as much as you can when you can, is especially since it doesn't cost you anything,
Exactly. The resources are out there for you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you to you guys, Jessica Sherman and Jenn Presser. And we can find you on the socials at Breakaway Casting and at Jessica Sherman.
jshermy.casting.
jshermy.casting. Casting. Yeah. And Jenn is at Breakaway Casting, right? Perfect.
Okay.
We'll put that in our show notes if you're listening on WeAudition as well. Make sure that they're there.
Thank you so much, guys. Have an amazing day.
Thank you too.
Thanks for listening to the WeAudition Show. Your hosts were Darren Darnborough and me, Richard Cambridge, from WeAudition, the leading professional actors community where you can connect, learn, elevate your career, and always get a self-tape reader on demand. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a WeAudition member, or even if you're not, we would love it if you could please subscribe to this podcast, as it really helps us. And if you have friends who might get value from this episode, please share the link with them. You can find us at weaudition.com, or for your iPhone or iPad by searching WeAudition on the App Store. See you next time.